This is a little bit about us as an organization. We are entering our 30th year, celebrating our 30th year since our organization started, and we really work alongside and walk alongside our partners in the countries that we have our global partners in. And really one of our main focuses right now and what we focus on, and we've done for a long time, is women and children at the margins. So when we go to Guatemala, you'll be able to work alongside and view what's happening with our program partner and how they're looking to elevate and how they elevate educational opportunities for girls in rural areas in Guatemala. Like I said, we're celebrating our 30th year. We're going to go to the next slide and we're going to watch a very brief video. It's about a 3-minute video, just a background about LPGM in general. If you're new to the organization, this tends to be a very helpful primer. Oh, sorry, everyone. I don't know what happened to the slide, Dan. That's interesting. You must have lost it. Well, I think we're going to skip that slide then, and I'm going to hand it over to Dan.
Yeah, thanks. So why are we doing this? Why do we do these trips to places like Guatemala? I'm not going to read this text. You can read it yourself, but essentially that we recognize that we are interconnected with our neighbors and that God has created all of us around the world, not just Americans, but Guatemalans as well. And that sometimes with the power that we have had, we've made a mess of things, just as human beings do, that we are broken human beings. And that we can learn from our neighbors. In fact, we believe that we sometimes meet the face of God most in the people who have been pushed to the margins of society and our world, and that meeting them face to face, we can learn from them about both our own faith, about who God is, and then come home and put that learning into practice. And so we are going to hear about some of the really unique ways that CCFC and the students that they serve and hire and walk with are doing really interesting things around the environment, around girls' education, and making their world better for the people who live there, and help then come back and become co-creators in God's world of healing our own communities. So it's a really amazing place to be. Laura, you can go on ahead to the next slide as well. So the vision of LPGM, what we hope the world looks like once our entire mission is complete, is that we envision a world where relationships transform boundaries. And those relationships are really, really key to what LPGM is all about. That everything starts and ends with relationships, that we have to listen to and understand our neighbors. And it's a world where everyone has the resources and the opportunities they need to thrive. And if we go to our mission next, that's how we as an organization work toward that vision of the world, of how God calls God's kingdom into action. And our mission is that LPGM as an organization provides access to quality education for people at the margins, especially women and girls. So we do have programs that also support boys, but this program in particular, with our partnership with CCFC, is focused especially on girls who have had least access to education, and they also drop out of school earliest. And so two sort of key parts of that are that some of our programs and partners remove barriers to education, which is part of what CCFC does as well, giving girls scholarships to stay in school longer, and then also improve the quality of the education that they receive. So we have programs in other countries who really focus on teacher development, professional development, improving the quality of the education that students are getting. And those two things together help to move toward that vision where all people have the resources and the opportunities that they need to thrive. So go ahead, Laura.
Thanks, Dan. So a little bit about our destination. If you're here to learn about India, you've come to the wrong place. We're here to talk about Guatemala today, and specifically the Alta Verapaz district or department, which you'll see in yellow here. So this is up in the cloud forest at elevation. Um, and I want to tell you a little bit about, you'll see some fast facts there on the side, but for the trip that we're planning, we're going to fly in and out of Guatemala City. And then from there, we're going to travel to the partner's site, CCFC's site, and it's located in, as you see, the north central region of Guatemala. We're going to learn a little bit more about CCFC in a little bit, but really what you need to know is it's about a 5 hour bus ride from Guatemala City to get to CCFC, and we try and be as comfortable as possible, but it is a bit of a hike to get there from Guatemala City. A little bit about Coban, which is the capital of Alta Verapaz, and that area specifically. I started the presentation trying to say something in Quechua, and that's because this was part of the Mayan civilization, and so strong ties to the Mayan culture, which is why there's Quechua spoken in addition to Spanish. Near CCFC, there's actually Mayan ruins, I'm told, that you can travel to that are very either on the property or just outside of the property to experience and learn a little bit more about. As we think about a trip in June, some of the questions we always hear is, well, what should I pack and what is the weather going to be like? You'll get a curated packing list as we get closer to our departure. But just so you know, in June, it's rainy, but not as rainy as in May. But it can be wet, a little muddy, and yet lush and beautiful, as you saw on the first slide. As Dan talked a little bit of our partner is Community Cloud Forest Conservation, and we would spend on our trip the majority of our time on CCFC's campus. And it's one of our partners that has the ability to house us on site, which really I think allows for the opportunity to cultivate deep connections with those that are there, as opposed to staying, offsite in a guest house or a hotel. We would be staying on site. This is some information just generally about CCFC. As Dan said, really they're looking at elevating individuals, particularly young women, so they can be sustainable and healthy in their relationships within their families, in their communities. And we know that one of the key pieces of that is staying in school and maintaining the opportunity to be educated and to bring that expertise back into their families. And so the on the bottom right hand side, it really talks about kind of their main objectives. I'm going to hand it over to Dan, who's going to talk a little bit more about what LPGM sponsors as well as other programming within CCFC.
Thanks, Laura. I, again, not going to read word for word, but CCFC is an organization that is over 15 years old at this point. And Rob and Tara Cahill, who are pictured there, are the founders and the co-directors of it. They're a couple who moved to Guatemala more than 20 years ago at this point, raised their kids there, and have really dedicated their lives to improving the quality of life for the young women and men who live in that area. Their four main initiatives, we'll talk a little bit about the WALK program. That's an acronym that stands for Women in Agroecology Leadership for Conservation. I'm not going to go deep into that, but it's a training program for girls between the ages of about 13 to 26. That's a 25-day program that happens during their summer break from school, which actually for Guatemala is typically in November and December. And then a new school year starts in January for them. But that looks at environmental programs, reforestation, agroecology, which is doing agriculture in eco-friendly ways in the cloud forest, so that to try to avoid the traditional sort of slash and burn agriculture that happens. Which has a long history in Guatemala and with the Maya people in general. But just as the population has boomed and as more resources are needed and more crops are exported, is having really devastating effects on the cloud forest. And so CCFC works to maintain the existing cloud forest as well as reforest areas that have been cut down as well. and then give families and students the tools and the education that they need to really think differently about how to support their families in even more robust ways than sort of just the corn-based agriculture or monocrop agriculture that they have relied on for a long time. And we'll get to see and participate in planting trees and learning about the agroecology programs that they run as well. So, go ahead, Laura. And Laura can just play a little introduction video about this as well.
All right. If you can't hear the sound, please alert me immediately. I think I did share my sound though. Let's try.
This is the new walk parcel, the agroforest ecosystem that the students and the Women in Agroecology Leadership for Conservation program did in November, December session for 2 weeks and in January for 2 weeks. We have level contours on the hill sloping agricultural land with living plants like this row of pineapples that are perennials. And there are nitrogen fixing trees on the next contour. Leaves for making tamales on the next contour. There are contours of flowers that people can take to church or sell in the market. There's all kinds of perennials that hold the soil and allow fruit trees and other trees to go on. We now have level contours of compost, which are in the row composting, also acting as a sieve to retain soil. When it rains, we no longer have soil erosion because we have a living contour of inga trees, palopita trees, gandul, which is pigeon peas, chipilin, which we ate this morning for breakfast in tamalitos. We have madre de cacao trees, all nitrogen-fixing trees in a row to hold the soil, fix nitrogen, capture carbon, and put carbon into the soil. Fixing nitrogen so that nitrogen is available to the row crops that are grown in, the annual crops grown in the crop alley. Really cool.
You can hear her passion, right? It's wonderful to hear Tara talking about this. And this is her talking about it, but she's sharing the work that's been done by the interns. And that all of that, and I'm not an agricultural expert, but all of that thoughtful planning that goes in, knowing where they live, the conditions that they're living in, the challenges that they're facing. It's very contagious to hear her talk about it, even though I'm not a farmer. Let's continue for a moment here and talk a little bit about what LPGM provides for you. And I won't go exactly point by point on this, but really what you need to know is our goal is to kind of welcome you and make sure that your needs are met from the time today when you're thinking about this trip, through kind of your contemplation and answering questions through your registration, and then all the way through until you return. So we do help with booking flights. The flight is outside of the cost of our trip, but we do help with pulling together group flights and routing individuals. We usually typically meet in Houston or Miami, and then all come in on the same connecting flights. So I would be your point person and happy to help with arranging that part of your travel. We do host pre-trip meetings where we all get together as a community, depending upon where we're located, likely virtually, as we get ready to go and have several meetings along the way to answer questions. We give you packing tips, certainly guidance on health recommendations, although we do defer to your primary provider for kind of walking through what would make sense for you as you're traveling, and really making sure, as you saw Mary here, having a dedicated staff member and host on the trip to address any concerns and provide meaningful reflections in the evening, kind of walking alongside you. And then, of course, when you get back, what do you do with all of this? How do you make sense of it? We provide post-trip reflection opportunities and reentry support. Dan, anything else to add on this slide?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. A typical itinerary, what would we do in Guatemala? Like I said, we would stay on site at CCFC's campus, and we'll see a little preview in a moment of that with a brief video. But there'll be opportunities, as Dan said, to work alongside the individuals at CCFC, maybe planting some trees. But it's not a mission trip per se of getting your hands dirty every single day. It's walking alongside and listening and learning. We would have time for nature hikes, a lot of bird watching teaching at CCFC. And as people are interested in learning more about and exploring the areas around CCFC, we would have hikes and discussions and guided hikes explaining about what we would be encountering together. We do have opportunities for worship. And then finally, we do want to have a little bit of fun as well. And so as a group, we would decide if we would like to have a day off-site at a local market doing some tourist items or touristy activities, or maybe taking in a day at a natural water park, which I am told is lovely and wonderful. I want to share this little brief video here that one of our champions put together on a recent video. If you've seen it on YouTube, we're just going to watch it again here, but it's a really lovely portal into what would happen when you arrive at CCFC and what do the accommodations look like.
Let's take a journey and see what it's like when you come to CCFC in rural Guatemala. It's a beautiful outdoor space for meetings, informal conversations, and just hanging out, enjoying the concourse. This is the place where group discussions tend to happen with the women and groups, especially during the walk program. When you walk out of the main building on a sunny day, you will be greeted by a line of trees signaling you are in the cloud forest. And here, just a short walk from the center, we have the beach. You never know what macroinvertebrates will pop up around here. Look at all these little trees waiting to be planted. This is an area of such new growth. Listen carefully, you can hear the birds in the background.
All right. It's just so soothing. I want to be there right now. Dan, could you walk through just a few pieces about the facility itself and usually some questions we have about, well, what are the accommodations exactly like and what is the bathroom situation and things like that? Just some of those, we'll kind of pick off some of those questions that you might have.
No problem. So CCFC is off the grid in terms of generating their own electricity. They have solar panels and hydroelectric power, but in the years that I have been going there, that power has gotten much more robust and regular as they have just sort of built up their capacity. So they even have Wi-Fi now available on their campus. But it's really amazing to see. You can walk up to where the hydropower dam is that they've created and to generate electricity just up one of the hillsides. But then to see the creativity that they have used for much of the generation as well. So they use wood-burning stoves in the kitchen to cook the meals, and you eat a lot of fresh buns and bread that they bake directly there on campus, sometimes using the malanga or taro root in that they grow there as well. And the residual heat from those wood-burning stoves then heats water that they have water heaters directly above them that aren't electric or fired by natural gas or something in the way that we would in our basements, but it's heated from the residual heat from those stoves and then stored in hot water tanks for nice hot showers that you get in the morning. So it's really an amazing way. And as long as the group sort of spreads out their showers enough throughout the day, and everybody should get a hot shower, if everyone's not showering at the same time. The accommodations themselves are really beautiful. They are a little bit rustic in a good way, I think. But there are bunk beds in some rooms, double or queen size beds in some other rooms, and we just divide up the rooms sort of based on the group and sort of who fits with whom in those spaces as well. But lots of blankets. It does get cool at night, and so plenty of blankets. There are open air windows that can be shut, but there are not screens on those windows, so you might get some insects and bugs coming in at night, but not in a bad way that you're going to get eaten up by mosquitoes by any means. And so it's just really, you get that fresh, cool breeze from the cloud forest. The meals are prepared right on site under the direction of Tara and the staff there, who are just really wonderful cooks. Lots of vegetables and fruits that are grown on campus or nearby from local vendors. Really sort of a vegetable forward meal, although they do have chicken and other meat as well throughout the week. But just really amazing. Lots of beans, fresh made tortillas from locally grown corn. And dietary restrictions can be accommodated if you have those within reason, but especially gluten-free and vegetarian are very easy accommodations to make for folks. And then they are just really cautious, if other people have other needs, restrictions, or just things that you need, they're really good at working with that. In fact, I think I was with a traveler a few years ago who had a corn allergy, which I hadn't heard of before. But they were able to accommodate that, although they typically have lots of corn in their diet. And so Tara is just really a great host in that way of being able to accommodate folks. And then there are times that, we take a van, sort of a small minibus from the airport in Guatemala City up to the campus. There might be times where if we're doing a little village visit or something that you may be invited to ride in the back of a pickup truck with railings on it to hold on to. And there are a few seats inside the truck for people who are not able to do that. I know for my kids in particular, that was a highlight, riding in the back of the pickup truck, that they loved doing that and thought it was really cool. But also, we try to do that safely and make sure that people have the accommodations they need for that as well. Laura, I'll go back to you then for the next part.
Great, thank you. One thing I want to touch upon, I think, is just the toilet question.
Oh, sure. I can jump into
how
that.
about, yeah, why don't you cover that?
Yeah. So because this is set up as an environmental learning center, and they really try to be really careful about how they do everything, the way that the toilet system is set up is they don't have indoor plumbing in the same way, although they do have sinks and showers and that sort of thing, and very nicely done. The toilets themselves are composting toilets. So essentially they've built little seats with a real toilet seat on the top. But inside those seats is just a 5-gallon bucket filled with sawdust. And then there's a bag of sawdust next to the toilet. And so you do your business in the sawdust, you cover it up with more sawdust, and then once a day they take those out to a compost area, and those are composted over about the course of a year, which Rob will show you and talk to you about that whole process. But then they generate enough that they can both use and sell some of the compost to local farmers as well. It's really remarkable how well it works. Once you see it and use it, you realize that it's easy. It doesn't smell. There's no flies. It is cleaner than you might picture, but it is just something to know going in that is part of how it works. So it's really quite remarkable.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that perspective. Next slide. I should have advanced this while you were talking so everyone could take a little bit of a look. But as you talked about the back of a pickup truck in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a group there traveling about, some pictures of food and the delicious fruits that are prepared on site and meals that are pulled together by the staff. In the middle there, there's that natural water park, a group shot from the natural water park trip that happened. Bottom right, you'll see Rob there doing a walk and talk around the campus. And so just another little portal into what life is like at CCFC and what travelers experience. We're going to move next to who will be your host, who will be your guide, and that's Mary. And some of you already know her, Pastor Mary, as leading your church. And if you're getting to know Pastor Mary, I'm going to do a little Q&A with her, so we can all get to know her a little bit. I don't know, Mary, if you saw these questions ahead of time or if
I
this
did
will be
not.
kind of on the fly. But this is kind of a fun little time for us to spend together so everyone can get to know you a little bit better. Okay, Mary, are you ready? You're in the hot
I'm
seat.
ready. I'm
Okay.
ready.
Mary, what is one thing you never leave home without when you travel?
Hmm. I really like, well, I don't know if I could say I never leave home without this, but when I travel internationally, I have one of those UV pens that you use. You stir it in your water to sanitize your water in a pinch. And it doesn't filter the water, but it does kill anything in the water that might hurt you. And I think that that is incredible technology. So I take that with me everywhere I go
Great.
internationally.
I'm going to go on Amazon after this and look that up.
Yes.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, second question. Could you share a brief story from your last travel experience internationally or domestically where you felt God's presence?
Wow. The last time I was in Guatemala, I was able to have some really meaningful experiences speaking to local people in some of the villages around CCFC. Partly, I was working a little bit on some postgraduate work, so it was related to that. Um, but I think hearing the stories of those people and hearing really how God has been at work in their lives for generations, and with not only them, but in with their ancestors and in the environment, I think I feel God very closely in those moments of relational um, connection that is so very unlikely in our world in so many ways. It's a little more likely these days with the abilities that we have to travel and to communicate, but really the experience of being in another part of the planet and sharing something deeply human with somebody who is so different from you is truly astounding. It's really mystical almost to me.
Thank you. That's fantastic. I really appreciate that. That does tie into relationships matter, right? Like, and you can form relationships across boundaries and miles and miles. And you're right,
Yeah,
today's technology allows us to maintain those relationships, but really meeting individuals where they're at and spending time and sipping a coffee on a porch in the morning can be so meaningful and impactful. So thank you. Thank you for
truly.
sharing that. Final question. And you kind of touched upon this a little bit in your introduction, but like, what has surprised you most about your travel with LPGM?
I think something that's a little difficult for me to explain sometimes when I try to talk about LPGM to people I've never met is the fact that this isn't really a mission trip in the way that many people might imagine a traditional mission trip. It's true that we get to do a little bit of working alongside our partner. We get to do a little bit of tree planting and maybe even some cooking, but we're not there to serve. And and I think that in some ways that makes us very vulnerable because relationships are a lot harder than just going and doing some nice things for people. It's much harder to actually get to know someone and to give part of yourself, not just of your time and your resources, but to truly be open to sharing with somebody else. But that is what changes the world. Service is gravy, it's icing on the cake. We need these relationships in order to be able to weave the creation together in the way that God is calling us to. And so this program teaches you to make those relationships and to prioritize them, and to let everything else that the Holy Spirit might be calling you to together to bubble up from that foundation. You don't have to think of it on your own. You just have to show up and be with another person.
Thank you, Mary. That was well said. I really appreciate that response. I'm thrilled you're going to be leading the trip in June. So that's a little get to know the trip leader. We're coming down to the end of our time here, everyone. I want to talk briefly about next steps. We do have a webpage that you can find by going to our main webpage of lpgm.org, navigating through the travel with us section to learn more about the trip itself. The price for the trip is $18.50, which does not include airfare, but does include most everything in country. We have an early bird special. If you place your deposit by January 5th, it's a $300 non-refundable deposit, and then your price would be $17.50. If there are questions you have about the trip itself or the expenses or airfare expenses, I encourage you to reach out to me. We are looking to fill this trip to about 18 travelers. We can accommodate a few more, but 18 is kind of a nice number, and I think pretty manageable from the perspective of maneuvering around and kind of our being nimble as we're at CCFC and in the surrounding areas. So we are excited to offer this opportunity and look forward to welcoming travelers. And again, at this point, if you're contemplating it, if you're ready to make your deposit, wherever you are in this process, I encourage you to reach out and ask questions. I will be your point person. As I'm newer to the organization, I will find answers and get back to you most often, but want to make sure that as you're discerning, you have all the answers to the questions you have. And there was a question in the chat, and I wanted to talk about the intergenerational piece. In fact, I wanted to hand it over to Dan because I recall during introductions, there was a question about how does that intergenerational piece come together? And so, Dan, I'm wondering if in like the few moments we have left, if you could share that. And if anyone else has questions, you can come off of chat when he's done speaking or come off of mute, pardon me, when he's done speaking, or place them in the chat.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Yeah. And please add in other questions as well. So, Betsy, I wish there was a little bit clearer answer, but I think it sort of depends on just who signs up for the trip. When my kids came with on our trip 2 years ago, they would have been 6 and 8 years old, and there were a couple of other kids as well, but they probably were, they were maybe 30% of the trip was kids, and they absolutely adored it. One of the things I think that's great about a trip like this that's intergenerational is we just don't get that many times in our society anymore where you really get time together with an intergenerational group. And church is one of those exceptions to the rule, that church is a place where people of multiple generations can spend time together. And I think that's a really great thing as well. And this trip is part of that as well. I have been in Guatemala with kids from 6 years old up to teenagers, and then people who are well retired and living an amazing retired life, and everywhere in between. So this trip does have a little bit more physicality to it. There are hikes in the cloud forest, walks to caves, and walking around the campus. There are not paved paths around the campus, so if you have some mobility issues, that might be something to think about. But whereas some of our other trips actually are a little bit easier in that way. However, with many of those activities, we do have the ability to just opt out on any given moment's notice. And if you prefer to just stay back and not go on a hike, that is a possibility as well. But I do think that part of the joy of it is being in the forest, getting down on your knees in the grass and planting trees. My younger son, his planting trees was like one of his favorite things to do, and that blew me away. It was surprised me, but he just thought it was so great. To be digging holes, I think, is what he really liked doing, and just learning about the how that whole process goes. So I hope that answers your question at least a little bit, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also wondering, like, when we're interacting with people from the community, what does that look like? What kind of ages of people are the connections with? You talked a little bit about WALK and how they work with people 13 to 26, I think the slide said, but that program isn't in session while this trip is occurring in June. So what kind of connections with the community are part of this trip?
Great question. So one of the other programs that I didn't talk much about is called Kids and Birds. That's sort of like a pre-walk program for younger kids locally in Guatemala, and they're I'm always hesitant to say that they will, but they try to bring one of the Kids and Birds groups there while you're there. Sometimes in Guatemala, things just sort of fall apart at the last minute in terms of planning that sort of thing. But Kids and Birds is a 4-day program for area schools where they bring elementary school students to their campus for 4 days. To learn about the agroforestry, agroecology programs that they do, but then also just really focus on the birds and the animals that live in the cloud forest. Rob and Tara Cahill are huge birders, so if you enjoy bird watching, that they are actually pretty well connected within the birding community in Central America. And in fact, one of their sons has contributed some of the data and photos that are used by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And so, it is really a remarkable birding area. And some of those birds migrate to the Midwest of the United States. And so you might recognize them from your time here as well. And so they're just a wealth of knowledge about birds. So they bring students to campus. If that doesn't happen, we also do village visits, and often we'll visit a local school and potentially individuals' homes, maybe even share a meal in somebody's home locally, and get to interact that way. So Spanish is actually generally a second language for many of the families in this area. Quechua is a Maya language, which is the predominant language that is spoken. But Rob and Tara speak both and translate for us along the way. And then the staff who live on campus who have been WALK students in the past and now are WALK leaders also typically speak Spanish as well. And we have translation available via Rob and Tara through that. I saw a question as well about health prevention, malaria, that sort of thing. We will provide much more detailed information in our orientation sessions about this, but the very short version is we highly recommend going to a travel clinic and speaking specifically to your travel doctor. Rob and Tara have never had malaria on their campus. They're at a high enough elevation that has never been a problem at their campus. However, we do know that as the climate changes and as the temperatures are warming there, they can literally see the average temperatures kind of climb the mountains of where they are, that at some point that could arrive on their campus. So again, we have never had things like malaria, but the flies and things are, I think, at a minimal. There are mosquitoes, but compared to Minnesota, they're not that bad. And so it is, a really, I feel like, pretty safe place. And we've had, people get little stomach bugs and things just from being in a new place. But largely very healthy. The temperature is quite comfortable. It can be rainy in June, and so we do recommend rain gear. But my experience has been that it will rain for a portion of the day, maybe an hour or two, and then the sun will come out again and be beautiful. And again, cools off at night in the evenings, but is just really a nice place to be.
I will bring warmer layers this time than I did last time, if that's helpful. It does get surprisingly cool at night.
Other
Any other?
questions? Well, if not, I think we will end our time together today. You have started the process of thinking about this. You found yourself here today. Very grateful for the time you have spent with us over this lunch hour to learn more about our trip. After we synthesize the recording and get it ready to go, I will send an email to all of you with some follow-up information, my contact information, a link to the recording. If you would like to share the recording with other individuals who couldn't attend today, we always welcome that. We feel like referrals are such a positive way. Hey, come along. I'm going to go to Guatemala. Why don't you join me? Those go a long way. And certainly, as you're continuing to think through this process, uh, any question, please bring to us, like I said, and we will answer. We will chase down the answer if we've not fielded that question before. We want you to be comfortable in making your decision, comfortable in the process, and make sure that we can give you the best care possible. Because sometimes traveling to new places is scary, and sometimes traveling to other countries can be intimidating. And we believe here that it's worth it. It's totally worth it. And we want to make sure that you have your questions answered as you think if this is the right time for time to go and time to join LPGM on our trip in June. So if there's no other questions, again, I want to thank you for your time today. Deeply on behalf of all of us here at LPGM, we're very glad that you chose to spend some time with us today. And we look forward to connecting in the future and hopefully see you on a connecting flight into Guatemala next June. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a great afternoon. Bye bye now.